What's up everyone, John here. Just a personal opinion, but 2016 was okay-ish as far as horror games are concerned. Layers of Fear, We Happy Few, and Through the Woods were good, but I still found myself wanting more fear in my life. Luckily, 2017 seems to be in better shape so far, with the release of the new Resident Evil 7, Outlast 2, and some others as well. We'll go ahead and top out the list with Resident Evil 7. So far, the game has garnished the best reviews we've seen on a Resident Evil game since Resident Evil 4, which makes me very excited about it. It's very reminiscent of PT, the teaser trailer for the now defunct Silent Hills game, and a lot of people are calling it a spiritual successor in a way. Unlike previous installments of Resident Evil, the 7th title is in first-person mode, probably for easy adaptation for VR support, but it does give you a different sense of terror from previous installments of the game. For instance, it makes you feel like there could be someone or something watching you at all times, and it can make for some really creepy atmosphere. If the demo is anything like the actual game, then you could expect some puzzle solving to advance in the game, all while avoiding the ominous Baker family that is lurking in the shadows. One of the things that really shines so far about this game is that it puts the survival back in survival horror. You're not some buff mercenary or government secret spy out to rescue the president's daughter or stop a zombie invasion. You're a single guy trying to find your wife, but in the process you're being hunted by deranged cannibals. Spooky. And that's the other thing about this game. If you're not familiar with previous Resident Evils, don't worry, the story survives on its own. Resident Evil 7 is available now. Next up is Scorn. This is probably the one that I'm the most intrigued and excited for. Just the reveal trailer reminds me so much of the creatures in Clive Barker's Jericho, mixed with a hint of H.R. Geiger's design from the Alien movies. This game appears to be in first-person mode as well, with both the player and weapons being different, to say the least. A lot of what we've seen in the game appears to be organic, from the weapons to the environments. There isn't a lot of information aside from the alpha footage preview shown here. The site describes the world as a nightmarish universe of odd forms and somber tapestry, where each location contains its own individual story, and as the player you will need to solve puzzles and meet characters to advance to the next path. The world itself will be open-ended and the regions interconnected. There will also be no cutscenes to, in their words, not distract you from the living, breathing, dripping world you're in. Yikes. Also, something to note is that there will not be a HUD in-game, which will help with the whole immersion in a dripping world thing they talked about earlier. No release date yet for Scorn, but it's planned for release sometime later this year. Capcom is going for the gold this year with the release of the Resident Evil 2 Remake. Announced back in August of 2015, the game has been on every horror fan's radar since. Very little has been spoken about the remake since then, but no news is good news, right? There was speculation that the demo for the remake may have been bundled with Resident Evil 7, but that hasn't been confirmed just yet. People are still trying to beat that game. You can expect similar gameplay to the original, with the camera set at a point for each specific area while you traverse and avoid an onslaught of vicious zombies. The game is going to be a lot spookier with a fresh coat of paint on it, but fans of the original will surely not be disappointed, as everything you love from the original will be back for another round of zombie killing goodness. Next is Visage, another first-person horror game that aggressively nods its atmosphere to PT. This game, right out the door, is absolutely gorgeous and completely captures the feeling of dread found in the Silent Hills teaser. Visage takes place, again, in a spooky house that calls for a lot of puzzle solving. These puzzles, when solved, trigger some graphically terrifying jump scares that basically say, yeah, you're heading in the right direction because we just scared the shit out of you. Right now it seems like the only areas at least revealed that you can explore are the house that you're in and sort of, I don't know, an alternate dimension. Reminds me a lot of the Silent Hills Otherworld. Very mechanical and rustic with that impending sense of dread we've come to love. There doesn't appear to be any weapons in the game, but then again it doesn't seem like any of the enemies are necessarily attacking you, but I'm sure that's just because the only footage we have so far is to show off the game itself and some of the spooky shit. Visage is set to release in March, so you have a month or two to play through PT a few more times before you try this out. Outlast 2, the sequel to the 2014 hit Outlast, is next up. Outlast 2 will have a lot of the same characteristics of the first title that fans are familiar with, including a video camera equipped with night vision you have to use to spot enemies in the dark while simultaneously sneaking around to avoid conflict with said enemies. Of course, that won't always be the case, but you can hope. One big difference between this game and the first, and honestly a lot of horror games coming out this year, is you're not restricted to a single building. In fact, the game starts you outside. While this should be a refreshing change, it doesn't help that it's nighttime and there are creepy bastards strolling around ready to cut you down right off the bat. Just from what we've seen in the demo is that Outlast 2 strives to completely immerse you in the horror and disgust of the plot, as seen from this pile of dead babies. Yeah, they went there. With the ravaging success that the first game was, I would be hard pressed to think Outlast 2 will be anything short of entertaining and hella scary. It drops in March of this year. Next, we have Overkill's The Walking Dead VR. VR's had a rough time this last year really getting the ball rolling, but between Resident Evil 7 and The Walking Dead VR, there may be a chance for the next big thing technology. With the gameplay footage we've seen, this game casts you into the shoes of a survivor of the same zombie apocalypse we've grown to love in the show and Telltale series, except, well, with VR. The game, being virtual reality, will be in first person throughout the entirety of your scourge through the undead hell. This, along with Resident Evil and Outlast 2, is going to put survival horror on the map this year. There have been a lot of VR games released that try to bring the zombie apocalypse to life, but I'm sure a game that is centered around The Walking Dead will really have us gasping for breath between the crowds of relentless undead. The Walking Dead VR drops later this year, so keep your eyes peeled. Next, we have the return of the Dead Island franchise with Dead Island 2. Taking place in a quarantined California, hence the island aspect, you'll be able to pick from a handful of characters to play with up to 8 total in co-op. You can expect quite a few similarities between this game and the first Dead Island. Weapon customization has returned, so there should be endless options to explore in the zombie wrecking department, with a wide variety of base weapons to choose from. Not to mention, the map is significantly larger this time around, with 4 main regions you can explore. Because of this, the only loading screens that will exist are in between regions, so rampaging the undead can go on for hours. The game was announced way back at E3 2014, so you can expect to see Dead Island 2 make its debut later this year. Rolling in next is the game Little Nightmares, a side-scrolling platformer that seems to have taken a page right out of a Tim Burton movie if it was horror. You control a 9-year-old girl named Six and guide her through an underwater resort called the Maw, and your goal is to get Six back to her home that she was kidnapped from. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. On top of needing to pull, climb, and hoist through the numerous puzzles scattered in each level, you'll have to be sure to avoid the many hideous creatures that lurk in the game wanting to kill you. And that's where the nightmares set in. This game does suspense perfectly. From the fearful atmosphere to the stomach-dropping sound design, you can feel the fear while traversing the world, which is amazing considering the game itself has an almost whimsical feel to it. If Amnesia and Limbo had a baby, it would probably look something like this game. Little Nightmares drops on April 28th, so don't miss out on this great horror experience. Next, we have Agony, and as the name implies, it looks pretty agonizing. Be warned that there is some not safe for work footage coming up, so make sure the boss isn't nearby. Agony takes place deep in the chasm of hell, and you start the game off as a tormented soul with no knowledge of your path. Just that it's really hot and you could really use some water, but you're in hell, so you can't really have any. The gameplay footage we've seen so far is all in first person, but the graphics and sound are just gruesome. Straight up just as bad as Scorn, only with fire. Your hero, as they refer to him even though you're in hell, has the ability to control people and simple-minded demons as well, which helps you survive the conditions you are in. As you begin to explore the area and interact with other souls scattered throughout hell, you learn that the only escape from hell is by meeting the mystical red goddess. On your way, you'll need to avoid a variety of just plain freaky demons to avoid dying even more than you did to get here in the first place. But I'm sure that there will be a few ways to power up your abilities and make yourself a more adequate adversary to the demons of hell. Agony is scheduled to come out the second quarter of 2017, just in time for a hellishly hot summer debut. And last, but certainly not least, is Friday the 13th, the game. This game has already commercially been a huge success, and for a good reason. Gun Media has captured the terror portrayed in the Friday the 13th movies and has, at least from what I've played, accurately represented it in this co-op game. Similar to Evolve, you can play with up to 8 people in one game and one player can control Jason himself. The player that controls Jason has heightened hearing and vision, and his main goal is to kill all of the counselors before the time runs out or he is either killed by the counselors or shut down by the cops. The counselors must survive for as long as possible, using a slew of items and weapons at their disposal, including bear traps, shotguns, and, if you're in a last-ditch effort, a tree branch. This game helps tie the terror together with the iconic slasher music striking as soon as you encounter the iconic villain and continues to play as you are pursued. Even though it's just a co-op game, just the anticipation and anxiety from encountering Jason is enough to chip a few years off your life. If you're looking for a multiplayer game that will satiate your desire for some suspense horror, be sure to keep a pin in Friday the 13th, coming out later this year. 2017 is already shaping up to be a great year for horror games, so be sure to stay on the lookout for all of these titles and other fantastic horror games throughout the year. So, which game are you gonna hop on? Have one we didn't listed you're gonna try? Let me know in the comments. And please remember to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel for more top 10s. You're watching Esports on PvP Live.